Okay, this is the first video that I have filmed with absolute zero makeup in a pretty hot minute, I think. I'm addicted to giving myself a stronger brow, so that's why there haven't been many new videos in the no makeup playlist recently, because literally, like, I don't count it unless I have absolutely nothing on like I do here. I have so many videos lined up that I'm planning to make right now, but a couple of you have actually kind of thrown a wrench into those plans and given me a new idea, which you see manifesting right here. A couple of you saw that I commented on one of my videos that I had recently relapsed with social media slash digital consumption addiction and kind of wanted me to like talk about that a little bit. And that's basically what I thought that I would do in this video. And then also make sure you watch to the end, because I actually have kind of an idea for turning this into a little bit of a series, and I will explain kind of my rationale for that and my idea for it once we get to that point. What I wanted to talk about today is social media addiction and kind of how I think we are conceptualizing it wrong. So a little bit about me. I have been on and off doing social media detoxes for several years now. The first time that I did it for 3 months, and 3 months of total sobriety. So absolutely no social media use, no checking people's Tumblrs or Reddits even when I'm not logged in, no mindless browsing of YouTube or Spotify, nothing. The next time that I did it, I was 4 months clean, and the next time that I did it, I was 5 months clean, and that was the most recent time that I did it. You will notice that these instances of sobriety are not all connected into one long sobriety streak, right? I always, after doing these detoxes, would come back to social media. And because I felt so different, I thought that maybe it would change my relationship to social media when I got back. I thought that it would give me more control over my usage of it. And what I think I'm finally figuring out is that that might not exist in a permanent state. I don't think that at least I'm starting to think that I may never get to a point where I am able to use social media without being extremely aware of its addictive properties and frankly keeping myself on a tight leash. I think that at the end of the day, it is a technology that is designed to exploit certain loopholes that we all have in our brains. No matter how much you detox from it, it is always going to go back to exploiting those loopholes and making you basically fall right back into total addiction, which is what has been happening with me. And the thing is, I've just been feeling a little bit like whenever I try to look for other people's accounts of detoxing from social media or kind of getting control over their social media addictions, I always find myself getting sucked into a browsing loop, basically, and never really being able to find content that I completely vibe with and that I feel like is really getting to the core of the issue. And to give you guys a little bit of an example of this, I recently was watching a video of somebody that supposedly was doing a major social media detox because she was hopelessly addicted, 18 hours of straight up screen time every single day. And I was watching this video of her supposed detox, which she was acting like was going really well, and then she showed footage of herself baking bread from scratch while watching The Office, and her laptop was like propped up on top of her microwave. I've noticed a tendency in other people's social media detoxes and in my own to not really fully detox off of the problem. And I think that maybe the problem is that what we are calling social media addiction is actually an entertainment addiction is actually just addiction to addiction itself. And I'll explain to you what I mean by that. I'm gonna link an article that I actually put on the community tab a long time ago, but that really I think gets to the core of this issue. When you move from constantly browsing social media to constantly having something blasting in your ears, to constantly having secondary visual stimuli that's also giving you auditory stimulus, to, always having music playing, to always having a television show playing, or a YouTube video, or a podcast, or ambient music, or an audiobook, or whatever the fuck, all of this is actually the same problem. I don't think that it is just Twitter and Reddit and Tumblr and Facebook and whatever that is the problem. I think an entertainment addiction is the actual core of the problem. And this is why when everybody, literally this happens to every single person that detoxes off of social media, right? They detox off of social media and then they switch to doing other distraction techniques with entertainment and with artificial stimulus that are still dissociated from the real world, right? If you are cooking dinner and you have a YouTube video playing while you're cooking dinner, you are still in the realm of the Black Mirror, right? You are not being fully present in your kitchen cooking dinner. You have entertainment that you are directing at yourself, even passively, because you cannot stand in your kitchen and just listen to your food cook and work with your hands on your food, right? I think that this is the actual core of the problem, and this is why every single person that detoxes off of social media is well, now I'm addicted to podcasts. Now I'm addicted to YouTube. Now I read random Reddit or Wikipedia articles and tell myself it's educational, right? Now I'm addicted to just checking people's Tumblr blogs even when I'm not logged in. Now I'm addicted to Netflix and television. And this is why I think that pretending like talking to people online is the source of the problem is completely disingenuous. The real core of the addiction is not being able to stand a certain amount of quiet in your brain. It is not natural to want that amount of stimulus. And this is why if you say you're detoxing off of social media, but then you enter a life where you always have television playing in your ears and coming at your eyes all hours of the fucking day on top of whatever stimulus you would normally encounter throughout your day, that is giving you fucking brain damage. And it's giving you the same, just as scrolling Twitter all the time would still be giving you brain damage, right? It is not healthy to have stimulus assaulting you at all hours of every day. And I think that a true detox is one where you switch from that compulsive consumption of media and entertainment to an active consumption of media and entertainment. Because let's be real, most of the times, I want you to seriously think about this, most of the times that these days we are putting on music, turning on a television show, turning on a YouTube video, turning on a podcast, pulling up some article, most of the times we are doing that, it is not out of an active and conscious desire to consume that piece of media. It is very different to tell yourself, I have Thursday night free this week, so I'm gonna watch Roman Holiday. That is very different from turning on Netflix merely because it is 9 p.m. and you always turn on Netflix at 9 p.m. Or putting in your headphones because you are in the kitchen, and when you are in the kitchen you put in your headphones and find something to play. That passive and compulsory consumption of media is the core of what is causing your social media addiction also. The actual consumption of media and the use of social media is not inherently the problem. The problem is actually when you are doing these things passively and tiring out your brain with the constant stimulus. And this is kind of why I feel like the complete cold turkey detoxes never really worked for me. Because while I was detoxing and giving my brain a break from that constant stimulus of social media and those loops where I would just automatically open up apps on my phone and start browsing, I wasn't training my brain into new ways of seeing and interacting with media. And I think that maybe what I need to do going forward is come up with new, stricter rules for interacting with media like I had in my childhood. Because honestly, I had a very, technology strict childhood. And if you're a younger person watching this, you probably had somewhat of a different experience from me, because, I was from the last generation that didn't grow up with iPhones and with laptops. So I didn't have a laptop until I think in high school. And then I didn't have any kind of handheld screen until I got my iTouch, which I think was in, I don't know, 7th or 8th grade. So maybe 12 or something like that. But even when I had those technologies, my mother set very, very strict rules for interacting with any kind of screen. So her rule was basically that we had to read for an hour to earn an hour of computer games or video games or whatever. And, if you read for 2 hours, you could get 2 hours of computer games or video games. And she also had this, rule for us that was, mandatory outdoor time. And so if it was a really nice day, she'd be like, you have mandatory outdoor time for 3 hours today, and she would just kind of kick us out of the house, and we would be expected to find some way to entertain ourselves. And, obviously if it was just a normal day, most days it was 1 hour of mandatory outdoor time, and that continued into when we were teenagers, and it was weird. And just because that was kind of how she grew up too, is her mom would just kind of be like, you kids get out of the house and I don't want to see you back home until dinner, and they would get into all kinds of trouble living their lives out in the world. And I honestly think that those restrictions not just made me appreciate the media that I was choosing to consume a lot more, right? Because I always looked forward to whatever game I was playing, or whatever, whatever I was doing on Webkins at the time. But it also kept my screen time down. And I think that when you set those kinds of restrictions for yourself in your media consumption, I think that is the answer, honestly, because the problem was never I'm playing Mario Kart. The problem was never I'm using Webkins, or I am playing Farmville on Facebook. Which, another interesting thing is that when I had such limited time on the computer, I very rarely chose to use it for Facebook. I always preferred to do, a video game for an hour. I really didn't prefer to do, social media stuff, because why would I use Facebook when I can text my friends, or when I'm gonna see them at school anyway? And so I'm kind of thinking that, the problem is that recently we have kind of started to have really, really easy access to all of these types of media and entertainment, and a lot of us were not brought up with the proper, like, mentality towards this entertainment. We basically were given this endless buffet of candy and never really had it drilled into us that, hey, if you eat too much candy, you'll start to feel sick. You consume too much entertainment, the entertainment doesn't, like, entertain anymore. You start to feel completely numb, or you start to feel really scatterbrained and weird about everything, or you can no longer suffer the feeling of being bored. And kind of what this article talks about, so this is from The Honest Broker, and it's just called The State of the Culture 2024. I'll link it in the description again, it's free to read. This is basically about the idea that entertainment is eating art, and it has this picture of, like, a big fish eating a littler fish. But then he expands upon that to say that distraction is eating entertainment, meaning that the distractive properties of The Office while you are cooking in the kitchen is actually the real thing that is drawing us in at this point. It's not that you really, really want to watch an episode of The Office that you have seen 8,000 times. It's actually that you are craving the numbing properties of The Office while you bake bread, because you have learned to have this kind of compulsory phobia of being alone with your thoughts or not having incoming stimulus. The relief from receiving the entertainment stimulus that you desire is actually more valuable to you at this point than the sound of the music, the jokes in the show, or whatever else the fuck, whatever the YouTuber has to say. And then he expands upon this even more and has an even bigger fish titled Addiction eating the distraction fish. It's not about art, it's not about entertainment or education or whatever you're telling yourself it's about. It's not even really about distraction. It's actually about addiction. A lot of people, when they are passively consuming music, podcasts, YouTube, television, it is not out of genuine interest. It is because they are acting on an addiction. The desire is no longer innate because what you're really doing is acting on the addictive properties of the substance, which is entertainment. And that is not social media addiction. Social media addiction started this, for sure, but the bigger issue is addictive digital society culture. I don't really know what terminology I'm going to use for this yet, but that is actually the crux of the problem. So many people, when you try to bring up that it is not healthy to have that much entertainment coming in at them, they will start sounding like addicts, and they will make so many excuses. Oh, I only drink because my life is so fucking hard. Well, yes. Like, that's how addiction works. Is, you are numbing yourself to, frankly, something that it is probably important that you address. Another reason that this suddenly became very abundantly clear to me is I realized that when I would go on social media and act upon that addictive urge, or when I would, compulsively put on music, when I would do these things, I would never really be enjoying the content that I was consuming. It didn't feel magic, like how it felt when I watched a movie I really wanted to watch, or how it felt when I had been outside all day and I frankly wanted to get into the basement and play Mario Kart or whatever. It didn't have that kind of joy for me. I would find myself, indulging and feeling the immediate relief of that first sip of coffee, and then not really getting anything out of it, and actually walking away from that media feeling irritated or frustrated, or just frankly like there was nothing there to give me a good enough hit. Music sounds better when you're not listening to music 24/7. Podcasts are more interesting when you actually wait to find something that truly interests you and has really good hosts and really well thought out content that you vibe with. Always putting just anything on in the background is not enjoyable in the same way. And I actually think that we need to be real about how, like, crap most content is these days. And I'm not even just talking about, like, content farm content. I'm talking about kind of just, like, everyday small YouTubers trying to, like, make it big. Like, there are so many YouTubers that just, like, they don't, like, wait until they have a good idea to make something. They just, like, make stuff to, like, have something to put out for the algorithm. And because of that, the YouTube algorithm has become so oversaturated. Everybody wants to get famous making a podcast. The entertainment industry is, I think, more just hypersaturated than it has ever been. And, like, a lot of that stuff is just junk. Like, a lot of it is, like, you know, good idea but poorly executed, or it wasn't a good idea to begin with. And at some point you have to ask yourself, do I want to waste my life listening to okay content instead of actually being there present physically? And you may be wondering, like, why this is a problem. And I need you to think about, would you, like, subject an animal to the kind of treatment that you are subjecting yourself? When you are receiving stimulus directly into your ear canals or directly in front of your face, your mind is not at rest. You are an addict, and because you are craving your substance, you think that the relief you feel when you indulge in that substance, which is entertainment, you think that that's relaxation. But actually, your brain, when it's, like, taking in information like that, it is not at rest. Like, you're basically sitting in a lecture hall when that's happening. And I'm including shit like listening to ambient music or whatever, because if you're constantly listening to ambient music, that is still input to your brain that is not coming from your actual physical environment. Like, you need to think about, like, well, would you take a dog and put headphones over its ears and constantly assault it with voices all day and sounds? Would you lock a dog in a room with a screen in front of its face and strap it in place and not allow it to move and just allow it to take in whatever was on the screen? You would never treat an animal like this, because that would be a fucking tortured, anxious, miserable animal if you did that. And unfortunately, we humans have kind of forgotten that we are animals too, and that even if you want to take in information 24 hours a day, which I get, I do, it will never be natural, and it will always be harmful to your brain to do that. You have to start rewiring yourself to understand how not normal it is to always prefer to put in your earbuds and isolate yourself from the world whenever you go out into the world and need to walk somewhere or drive somewhere. There needs to be periods of time where you do not have that kind of stimulus coming in. I have found that I start feeling just waves of relief and lack of stress when I just completely stop all of the stimulus for a couple of minutes. You know, I turn my car off after I park and I just kind of sit in silence for a couple of minutes before I go on to the next thing. Or I choose not to put anything on the radio when I'm driving and I just drive in silence. Or I sit on my balcony for several minutes and eat in silence instead of watching a YouTube video. Or I lie down on the couch and just lay there for several minutes in between tasks so that I can give my brain a fucking break. That is what your brain needs. It is not built to be taking in this stuff all the time. And it doesn't matter if it's like, oh, it's just background noise or whatever. You need to not have background noise sometimes. Your brain is not built to take in all this shit all at once. It's just not. I'm sorry, but your brain is not as strong as you seem to think it is. And that is why people that have these habits often feel so anxious and irritable and depressed and numb and overall overwhelmed by life. Because if you think about it, all of that entertainment consumption is still viewed as a task by your brain. That is still using up your mind's energy to take in that stimulus, even if you are doing it passively. When you take away that stimulus, and suddenly the only stimulus that you have in your day is, go to school, go to work, work out or whatever, talk to some friends, cook dinner, and, maybe consume some media at the end of the day, suddenly that is way fewer things for your brain to process, and it will be easier for you to do things like concentrate at work or in class, or making dinner will not seem like as much of a chore because your brain will be like, oh, it's like something new to do. And I guess there is this drive to make everything the maximum amount of exciting as possible. Part of the reason that we want to put on The Office while we cook dinner is because cooking dinner is not exciting enough for us, and that is because capitalism has fed us this lie that everything in your life is supposed to be like a movie, and it's supposed to be glitzy and exciting and loud, and there is this implicit presumption that if things are quiet in your life, something is wrong. And again, I direct you to my most recent point, which is that people are animals. And I'm sorry, but capitalism lied to you. You are not Taylor Swift. Your life is not the Eras Tour concert movie. There will be quiet moments in your life, and those quiet moments are how you really connect with yourself and the world around you, and they make you remember who you are. And so I think we all, frankly, as Americans, because this is a very American problem, we need to start accepting boredom. We need to start accepting boredom and not just ending the onslaught on our poor brains, because it's not healthy. And we all know that it's not healthy. And again, I anticipate that people are going to be very defensive about this and probably see this as puritanical or something like that. For me, this is not about like, stoicism and self-deprivation and, the dopamine detox, this is not that. This is, your brain is simply not meant to be taking in all of that. It's not about morality. It is literally about, there are a lot of people that can withstand a whole bunch of stimulus. Like, I am one of those people that I am just, frankly, a very productive person. I'm a very creative and inventive person. I am one of those people that, I can fit a lot into one day. But all that browsing is, even if it feels natural, it's not. I have found that a lot of times that, having something on in the background or whatever is actually, a lot more stressful than I really let on, for a very long time. Sometimes it feels like it actually makes working a lot more stressful than it would be if I simply did my work and then just took regular breaks in between tasks to do absolutely nothing. I think what a lot of us are doing is we are trying to make it bearable to get more done by kind of sneaking in relaxation while we complete tasks so that we don't have to take real breaks. I'm sorry, but you need to take just real breaks and stop doing the multitasking thing. This is just where I am kind of at right now. I am kind of thinking that some of my preemptive, beginning new rules that I'm gonna have for myself are gonna be pretty different from when I did detoxes before. It needs to be just intentional consumption only. And I think that will actually be kind of harder to stick to than cold turkey. So I think I might try to kind of maybe keep myself away from consumption for maybe at least before noon, because I've also noticed that when I listen to music or podcasts early in the morning, it kind of stresses me out for the rest of the day. I don't know why that is. I think it's just because my brain is still waking up and it's too much to have work in the morning plus second work where I have to listen to people talk. So I think the rule will not be trying to ban certain kinds of consumption. I think it will instead be intentional consumption only, and then also setting consumption limits. So I think maybe for the evenings, I will allow myself maybe 30 minutes or so of browsing, and that can be anything, browsing social media, browsing whatever, or maybe like an hour's worth of like watching. So an hour's worth of watching YouTube. Yeah, and I think that the other big rule needs to be no multitasking. Compulsively putting stuff in the background. So no browsing while I am watching something, for example. I have to be either 100% engaged in browsing or 100% engaged in watching something. And if I'm not having a good time, then I should immediately turn off whatever I'm doing. And so I think that that is going to help a little bit with the compulsiveness. For things like listening to music, I think like, you know, like in the gym, that's relatively, I think, like normal and okay. I don't see that as a big issue. For things like driving or cooking or cleaning and like other times when I just compulsively put on music, I think that the rule is gonna be, do I want to listen to something and what is it? That's gonna be the rule. It's like I can listen to something if there is something specific that I have an active and present desire to listen to. If I do not, and if I'm like, well, I kind of don't really know what I want to watch or listen to, then the answer is probably that I really don't want to watch or listen to anything. And I think that's going to be kind of how I break that habit of just impulsively and compulsively listening to music or audio while I'm doing stuff. Because honestly, there is something that feels a lot better sometimes about just having like a quiet half an hour to yourself while you cook dinner and just being in your head and focusing on the motor tasks of chopping the vegetables or putting things in a pan, and frankly it leads to better cooked dinners also. The human body, and including the human mind, is not built to always be in the intellectual state. You also need there to be times when you are doing a kind of hypnotic and repetitive physical task and the brain is switched off. I know we are all in the habit of feeling like we need to be thinking all the time, but my conclusion that I have reached, we all need to regress into just animal stupidity several times a day. Like, I am not like a woo-woo granola, like, let's all just eat herbs and, like, I am not like that. However, at the end of the day, like, you do have to kind of keep in mind what the body and mind was evolved to do. Take that into account when you are finding that certain things make you feel a little bit sick. I am still kind of figuring out like how I'm going to track this form of sobriety. I'm actually kind of wondering if maybe I need to start journaling. I am not really trying for perfection. What I'm really trying is seeing this as a way of doing kindness to myself and being kinder to my brain in a time when I am very, very overworked. Because I think a lot of like self-improvement people that do the dopamine detox thing do it for the sake of productivity, or frankly for rather Spartan reasons where they are trying to achieve this kind of manly perfection. And like actually my approach is gonna be a little bit different this time. I am not looking for perfection so much as trying to really, really drill it into my mind that this way of interacting with media makes me feel happier and will be more conducive to maturity and self-understanding and growth. Because the constant state of distraction and dissociation that is induced by nonstop media consumption, ultimately it has a numbing and a stagnating effect. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it this time around. And then the other thing that I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit is my idea for turning this into a series. So something that occurred to me the other day is that whenever other people make videos about social media detoxing, you get 1 or 2 videos maybe out of it, but that's like kind of it. And it's trying to cram all of the information about this specific form of addiction and this specific phenomenon into 2 videos it's just never enough. They never ever go deep enough into what this truly feels like, or the depth of what it's actually doing to you to be addicted to media consumption in this way. And so my thinking is that this actually might need to be a series on this channel, where each video I will talk about something different related to digital society. And so I've thought about talking about how digital society lends itself to extremism. I have thought about how it leads to self-victimization, well, the whole phenomenon of like aesthetic, people feeling like they have more money than they actually have. I have really so many thoughts about this, and to me this topic is actually a web. It is not this single point of like, oh, my Spartan digital detox and, you know, learning to not use Twitter. Like, it goes so much deeper than that, and there are so many kind of offshooting topics that I think would actually be way better to all have in one place. Like, as I think of them, and as I think of what I want to talk about, I will have just one video for each topic, and I'll put it all in a playlist, so you won't need to go browsing, looking to see if other people have talked about this yet. And yeah, honestly, I'm sorry, but this is the other thing, is this series is actually gonna go, like, hard against, media addiction. So many videos about this topic just do not go hard enough. Frankly, lots of copium being passed around. This is gonna be the real shit, like where we talk about the actual root problem. That's just my idea. I think it would be nice to have this all in just one fucking spot. I want people to actually kind of, the bugs are really loud, I'm sorry, to actually kind of come away from this series, if it ever ends, because I don't fucking know when it will, clear-eyed about these issues and feeling like they have real understanding of themselves and also of their relationship to media as well. So that's kind of what my idea is. Let me know what you think about it, or tell you what, if there are specific things in relation to digital society that you are interested in hearing me talk about, especially if you liked the analysis that I did in this video, do please let me know in the comments. I'm thinking I might also kind of intermittently throughout this series recommend books that have helped me learn about this topic. And, you know, of course, if people have book recommendations, I am all ears. I frankly have read a pretty decent amount on this topic already, so I am not like uber open to new suggestions, but you know, who knows? I'm still open to hearing stuff. Also, names for the series. I'm thinking Digital Doom, but I am willing to hear suggestions as well. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you thought about all of this. That is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. You should probably turn YouTube off after this video and let what I have said sink in instead of jumping right onto the next thing and not letting your poor brain process. Bye!